soundboard from a Stellar Wars. And this is the Type 1 soundboard, and this one, I think, goes down into the cabinet on the left wall panel. And so what I've done to this board is replace the 12,000 microfarad cap and installed a cap kit elsewhere, as well as replacing all the headers. I have tested this, but let's test it again. I've got my little homemade sound generating device here. Oh, it does have a switch up there. It's just in a different place. All right, we'll get to test that too. More power on. And I'm going to drive each of the 5 sound select inputs. And let's try the test button. That is not a very exciting test, but it does show that this board is working 100%. Testing the Stellar Wars power supply, and I've reflowed the solder joints on the back of both CN1 and CN2. I've replaced the rectifying diodes with 6A4s, replaced what was originally a 12,000 microfarad cap with a 15,000, and that is just fine to do that. I replaced this cap over here. I don't normally do that, but I did it this time. This board had 3 blown fuses. This, I believe, is for flipper power, solenoid power, and display power were all blown. So let's power it on. Actually, 2 of those were missing. And let's test display power first. Where's my meter? There it is. We have minus 103 plus 100. That is perfect. Let's go over to the other voltages. I'm going to find 5 on here somewhere. There it is. No, that's the 12. Sorry. Next one's 5. And over here we have 20 volts. And that is for the lamps. Over here we have about 40 volts, 38.8, let's say. And that's for the solenoids. I also did replace these 2 filter capacitors. These are in a high voltage section for the display. I have run out of axial leaded capacitors of the correct value, so I've substituted radial lead capacitors, and I've used rivets on the back side of the board to ensure that those are firmly secured to the board. I use these connectors so that I don't, these blank female housings, I guess, so that I don't accidentally short 2 pins together while I'm doing the measurement and ruin my work. So power supply is good. Next up are the MPU and driver. Testing the master display sent along with the boards revealed that segment F on the master display panel and on players 1 and 2 was inoperative. And here we can see why one of these 10K half-watt resistors is burnt and open. Resistor replaced, and it's as good as new. An overview of my new Williams System 3 through 7 test rig. All test boards courtesy of Mr. Victor, aka Dumbass on Pinside. The Stellar Wars MPU and driver board. And this game had sat for a long time. I think they just couldn't get to it. And the batteries, of course, that used to be right here, leaked, corroded up the right-hand side of the board, corroded below the 5101 and where the 5101 was, bottom of the board, and then leaked all the way down this driver board through the lamp matrix area. So I have abated all that alkaline. Since I needed to abate the alkaline in the lamp matrix area, I installed the FET modification, And you need some current, let's see, voltage divider circuit. That's what these 1K resistors do. And then there's 1K resistors on the back. I have that outlined in the pin wiki, how to do that. Had to replace a couple of 7408s and then these 4 switch matrix ICs. I have installed wire jumpers as prescribed by Williams if this driver board is used in System 7 games especially, but I like to do that to every driver board that I get. The 6821 at this location was only had a little surface corrosion on it, so I took it out, put a socket in, cleaned up the corrosion on 3 of the legs, and then reinstalled, and it works fine. I have replaced the 40-pin interconnect on both sides, all headers. I hate the original headers that are on these boards, those round headers, and some folks will try to reflow the solder on the back of them to accommodate or to correct some cracked solder joints, and it's just not feasible to do that. These sockets were just fine for the game ROM and the flipper ROMs and the 6810 and the 6802, or this is a 6808. I've added a blanking indication, replaced the capacitor in the upper left, heating up my iron to replace the capacitor down here, which I don't have installed yet. I installed a CR2032 coin cell battery, and this jumper connects it to the system, and that should hold the battery or the 5101 RAM settings for quite some time. So let's boot it up. We can see what's going to happen with these 2 LEDs. Normal is them to come on and then go off, and then the blanking LED will come on, and then the score displays will light up also. Here we go. So that was a perfect boot. I've already tested the soundboard, and you can see it's cycling between the default high score to date and 0, and solenoid 8 is flashing. That is undoubtedly a flash lamp somewhere on the game. And then I've got a power indicator here and a coin lockout coil. I'm not sure why that's not lit right now, but I'll check into that. The lamp matrix is doing its thing, so let's put it into test. All right. That is normal. I'll put the auto manual button in the up position, and you can see it scrolling through the display digits. By the way, this entire test rig is constructed from Mr. Dumbass, Mr. Victor's test boards. This one I repurposed. This is actually a System 11 test board, but I'm using it here on my 3 through 7 rig. And this is a sound diagnostics board, which won't come into play here. It does in System 7 games. And of course, here's the lamp matrix tester. So let's advance to the next test, which I believe is the lamp matrix. You can see that is operating correctly. The next test is solenoid test, I think. Yeah. Now these will kind of go in order. They don't go in order on the board because when I was talking to Victor about how to design this board, I had lobbied him to lay the LEDs out in the same relative orientation or location as the drive transistors on the driver board. So you can see there's 6 on the bottom, 5, 5, and then the special solenoid 6. So that this board mimics that. So if, for instance, this LED doesn't light, then I know it's Q24, the pre-driver, or Q25, the drive transistor, which is located in the middle position at this location. So this, for me, is a tremendous time saver. Oh, I just recognized why the coin lockout coil didn't come on. It's because I set this thing to free play by setting audit number 18 to 00. Okay, so I'm going to press the button again, and this is going to go into switch test. So it's showing 3 at this location. Let me see. Yeah, I can still test the special solenoid switch inputs. And again, these are laid out specifically to match the layout of the transistors on the driver board. Pretty cool, I think. So switch matrix. I'm just going to go through the diagonal of the switch matrix by pressing both buttons at the same time. So here is row 1, column 1, 10. It should advance by 9 each time. If you're quick enough with the math, you can do it. 46. And the last switch on Stellar Wars is 48. For whatever reason, these ROMs for Stellar Wars report up to switch 54, but switch 49 through 54 are not actually used in the game. So if I advance one more time, we see the game number, and we can adjust some settings in this way. There is setting 18, and you set the game to free play by setting the maximum number of games is what the setting is to 0, 0. I'm just going to advance all the way through this. In later games, it'll reboot the MPU, but in this particular series of games, you got to power off and then power back on. So after a long route, this driver board had all this done to it. The MPU had all this done to it. And Stellar Wars is going to be back in business shortly. Stellar Wars, I remember, is a fun game. I haven't played it for quite some time. It had a unique lockdown bar because it was a wide body that Williams built. And the corners of that lockdown bar will just tear your palms apart. It's very sharp, very pointy. I've never owned a Stellar Wars, but every time I come back to play one, that is my first thought. So here's an overall view of the new System 3 through 7 bench. I've got a meter over there because I was diagnosing some wiring problems that I had. The only problem that I had putting this bench together was my own dumbassery, I guess I'll say. I switched the 5-volt and ground connections on each of these boards, and the power LED, of course, wasn't lighting up, so that was a clear indication that I'd done something wrong. And I don't know why I do that, but it's sort of a tradition with me. Now, if I decided that I always flip that, so I'm going to flip it again, I'd probably still have it wrong. Last thing on my bench is these screws are ground, 5 volts, and 12 volt power. And I left these studs up for the 5 volts and ground so I could attach things like a logic probe here and I could measure 5 volts. I'll probably put one of those small meters on there. But this whole thing is powered from a System 11 power supply and a System 7 transformer. And here's my modified power supply. All right. That's enough. Thanks, everybody. Happy hump day.